We're in the 4th chapter of Genesis. We were talking about Abel being murdered by his brother Cain. And we spent a lot of time what was going on there. And I was watching something on the History Channel or something about all this. And most of what the rabbis talked about is exactly what we talked about. Then they said there was probably one view about all this was the reason that Cain killed Abel was Abel and his sister were, that was going to be it, right? And Cain was jealous.
Where?
Abel and his sister?
Yeah, because that interpretation is that's how they're going to procreate the world.
But whoever mentioned a sister?
I don't know.
I don't remember a sister anywhere.
No.
So you come up with a lot of weird stuff. But the question is, why would God have to put a mark on Cain to protect him? And then when Cain has a son, Enoch, he builds a city. Who's going to occupy the city?
Well,
And it goes on and
I got
on.
the answer. The Bible doesn't tell us the details, just like in the creation story, like you say, 2 creations. There were many, many other people at these different times. That's my theory.
Oh, I think so too.
Yeah.
The Bible isn't a step-by-step plan of what's happening. It's
I mean, he did start with 2 giraffes and just
Well,
populated the world.
I went back
Here's
to,
a bunch of
I
them.
picked up this book, Guy J. Wright, who was a professor at NCC, the
My
Bible.
professor.
And
Didn't learn nothing.
there's a couple passages I want to read from
You
that.
didn't read his book, obviously. So.
How many men, male and female, did God make? And he's talking about the first chapter of Genesis. Many people think that he made just one pair. Is there anything in this story that says, or even hints, that there was just one pair? And if so, of course, all in one place? If I have suggested God caused plants to grow all over the earth and created birds and animals everywhere, then it would be reasonable, a reasonable God with an intellect equal to man, to ask and expect one pair of humans to carry out the commission given to them by God. So in the first story, we're thinking one pair. And it's spread across. And we don't think God made one tree and, okay. And then some say and now he's going to make a connection between chapter 1 and chapter 2. Some say, what of Adam? Was he not the first man? After the 7th day or period when God finished, literally in Hebrew, brought to completion his work of creation, we are told that there was no man to till the ground. Does this say there was no man? Can it not equally well mean that there was no man willing to do what God asked him to do? From the first, it has always meant that to me. When I read it in Hebrew and knew that this infinitive could equally well be rendered, there was no man willing to till the ground, I was strongly confirmed in my first understanding. So what he's saying, he created all these people, but none of them were willing to take on the responsibility to care for the earth or to till the ground. So he started all over again with Adam and Eve. Which then tells you, and then there's one other thing.
Or should we condemn these other men for not telling
Well,
the
then he says, it says, but for the man there was not found a helper fit for him. Where did God expect Adam to find his helper? Was it from the cattle or the apes, the baboons, or the monkey? A far more logical answer is that it was from among the primitive people whom God had created long ago. Here, there might be an acceptable woman. If anyone objects that the Bible says Eve was the mother of all, and then he goes on to explain that. So when Adam is making an evaluation of, okay, who's fit for me, he's not looking at the animals. Wright is saying he's looking at all these other human beings female, and he doesn't find anyone suitable for him. So God creates him one.
Like a high standard.
And then, let's see, and then here we'll close it with this. It says that as soon as the first son was born to Cain, he built a city. And again, where did he get his wife? He built a city. For whom did Cain build it? Dare anyone guess that these people also were brothers and sisters of Cain, leaving Cain? We passed Genesis chapter 6, and he goes into this other we'll talk about. So what he is saying, God created man and woman, and then when we come to the second chapter, no one was willing to do what God wanted them to do about caring and tilling the earth, so he made Adam and Eve, and then when Cain killed Abel, Cain needed the mark because of these other primitive people out there, and when he built cities, was he building a city for himself? No, it was these other inhabitants. And then when we get to chapter 6, a little more things tie into
Yeah,
it.
you don't build a city by yourself either.
No.
You have, these other people are.
But again,
He was a compactor.
God doesn't give us all, no one was there watching all this when this was written.
We don't have a blueprint. We don't
But
have-
it is also, you've got it, it's not, I don't want to say, it's not literal word for word. What it's trying to do is explain how we came into being.
Could the word man in Hebrew, could it be mankind? instead
Oh
of
yeah, a
man?
lot of times when you use this, mankind.
See, that would
man-
answer your question.
Mankind. So you've got to, you can't look for details that aren't there, but you've got to understand they're trying to build the framework for who we are and how we came to be.
And they're trying to explain who God is and all of this.
Well, eventually we're
How it
coming
is and
to the, and I'm getting down into the Gospels, but I'm going to start with John's prologue this Sunday. And it's very theological, but he makes a point. And the point is, in the Synoptic Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, it isn't until halfway through Mark that these people are starting to come to the disciples are coming to some understanding of who Jesus is.
They were a bunch of thick.
But John doesn't
We all
wait
agree.
8 chapters to tell us. He doesn't even wait one verse.
Wouldn't you, after the first miracle, wouldn't you be convinced? Boom.
Would we?
Well,
It doesn't take
we're
a
going to look at all
rocket
this. Well,
Yeah.
so I'm
Yeah.
going to start with this. And John is laying the foundation just like Genesis is. So so we're 12. Cain knew his wife. Again, we're not told. It's just that he was gone from the presence of Adam and Eve in that household, went out into the world. He found a wife, and we'll get back to that more in chapter 6. He was born, conceived and born Enoch. When he built a city, he called the name of the city after the name of his son Enoch. To Enoch was Irad, and Irad fathered Meh. And all these, it goes on and on. Fathered Lamech, and Lamech took 2 wives, and it just goes on, and it's going to tell us now how different guilds or craftsmen arose.
Right.
Adah bore Jabal and was father of those who dwelled in tents and had livestock. That's your nomads. His brother named Jubal was the father of all those who played the lyre and the pipe. Zillah was also bore Tubal Cain, and was the forger of instruments of bronze and iron. So he was a metal worker. And Lamech said to his wives, it just goes on. So Cain's out there in the world, creating the world.
Well, what about this business of polygamy?
We haven't been introduced to it yet.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
Yeah,
there
two
we
wives,
have.
yeah.
And
19.
I will say, as missionaries, when they start translating the Old Testament, they do run into problems, especially in the nomadic regions of Africa, because they're trying to get them to be not monolithic. They're now I lost my word.
But
one wife.
Yeah.
Malignant, no, look at me.
Monogamy.
Monogamy. So what do you do with somebody that has 10 wives? Well, the problem was, they told him you could only have one wife. What?
She said you feel sorry for him.
And so he'd pick a wife and kick all the others out, and then they had no support,
Yeah.
no family, and it created more problems. The more wiser missionary said, okay, this is your situation, you stay in it, and as we go on forward, you know, they taught monogamy. But then they'd translate the Old Testament and hear all these patriarchs had all these wives, and they were saying, well, the Bible said.
Yeah,
So anyway, what Cain does, he represents a branch of mankind that moved away from God. Because that's important. There is that group out there, and God hasn't revealed anything about how that group got out there, but Cain is related to it now.
Now, do they become the Canaanites?
Nope.
No.
Because we're talking about the world, at least the known world that they, and it's probably bigger than just their region. But they knew people were out there. But now we come back at the very end of chapter 4, and we come back to the family of Adam and Eve. So what this is differentiating between is those who are of the divine family, Adam and Eve, and those of the world, which is represented through Cain. And then through all that, we know there's cities, and we know we have metal workers, we have musicians, we have the nomad,
Farmers?
and all of that that's out there. But now we come back to Adam and Eve here. And Adam knew his wife again, and she bore a son and called his name Seth, for she said, God has appointed for me another offspring instead of Abel, for Cain killed Abel. To Seth also a son was born, and he called his name Enosh. At that time, people began to call upon the name of the Lord. Woo!
Well, I wonder how
So
they did-
it takes us
4 chapters.
3 generations. Adam, Seth, and Enosh. So it's 3 generations before a relationship with God was reestablished.
And Seth was born a long time after Cain and Abel,
Yes.
so.
And then, chapter 5.
But I wonder what prompts them to call on the name of the Lord?
Doesn't tell us.
I want to know. Well, I mean,
You're not your
somebody.
Hebrew.
That's one of your questions you have to ask.
Okay, hold that one down.
Well, and the name of the Lord, let me see what it says in the, it's all capital letters, which means in Hebrew it was Adonai, which was probably a substitution for Yahweh.
Okay.
So we're not just calling on the name of a God.
Mhm.
We're calling on the name of Adonai, which is a substitution for Yahweh. I know that because in my English Bible it's all in uppercase.
That's true.
And so somehow 3 generations, or well, I guess it'd be 2 generations after Adam, they're reconnecting back. And you got to remember, Adam had a very intimate relationship with God. And his grandson in that generation reconnected. They started calling back on the name of Yahweh. Okay?
Did they?
So that was after Cain and his group left, the influence is gone.
Oh my
and-
goodness.
There's a separate, that's what I'm saying. Cain represents a separation away
Right.
from the godly line, because this godly line keeps coming up. And then we go through, this is the book of generations of Adam. When God created man, he blessed them and named them man. And when they were created, when Adam had lived 130 years, he fathered a son in his own likeness after his image and named him Seth. The days of Adam The days of Adam after he had fathered Seth were 800 years, and he had other sons and daughters. Thus, all the days that Adam lived were 930 years, and he died. And now we go through all this genealogy.
But we don't take those literally, it just means a long time.
Well, it depends on who you are.
I mean, you can't get a living cell to live for 930 years.
Well, I've had creationists explain it that once the flood of the whole world happened, it changed all the physics and the natures of living beings, and that's the other explanation. It isn't an individual, but it is a clan. I have no idea.
I've heard too that it's a way to honor someone by saying they had
Right.
lived that long.
Well, it's an honor, but this, when we talked about Adam living 930 years, he just gave us 930 years of history in one sentence.
Is it God's time or our time?
Our time. However it comes up, these genealogies are condensed history. They're so damn condensed, it doesn't tell us anything.
Well, and they didn't even have a calendar then.
Well, how do you know?
Well, who invented the calendar?
Mayans.
Well, they knew how to reckon time a long time ago. But the idea is that we're going to go through history. Now, I was going to say that Bishop Unger, who came up with the young Earth age of 4004 BC that was created, this is how he figured it all out. He went through these genealogies and he took them literally and added them all together, and there you are.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure, but all I'm telling you, this is condensed history. It's going to get us from Adam and Eve, separates us from Cain and the rest of the world, and gets us way further down the road.
No.
We're kicking the can down the road.
Yeah, real fast.
And if I figured this correctly, in chapter 5, verse 25, when Methuselah had lived 187 years, he fathered Lamech, and Methuselah lived after he fathered Lamech 782 years, and he had other sons and daughters. Thus all the days of Methuselah was 969 years.
He died.
Now, one time, and I don't know how accurate I was, but Methuselah had to die in the flood,
Ooh.
and he didn't survive it, but actually could have. So when you start getting very precise, it doesn't always come out precisely the way we want it to. And so that's condensed history. I personally tend to think it's clans, because what it's talking about is the spread of people. The population of the world getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And in chapter 6, when man began to multiply on the face of the land, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw the daughters of man were attractive, and they took as their wives any they chose. And the Lord said, My spirit shall not abide in man forever, for he is flesh. His days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterwards, when the sons of God came into the daughters of man, they bore children to them. These were the mighty men who are of old, the men of renown.
The giants.
The giants. I did a paper on that section.
Oh, she did read it to us.
I think I threw it away eventually. And who were these daughters of man and the sons of God? And what this guy said, Wright says, the sons of God are the descendants of Seth. And this is what I found in my paper. And the daughters of men are those outside with Cain and the rest of the world.
So you had two clans coming together.
What are the Nephilim?
Well, they were giants, because there was the race of giants, maybe, and I said one of the people who, this is the explanation of how we got this race of giants, because they considered it, literally the angels or the sons of God's came down and mated with women and had the super race. Others, let's see, it was the line of Seth or Adam going into the women, other women of the world. The bottom line is the bottom of conclusion. We have no clue what this section means.
What
Other,
about that one country in Africa where the men are so tall?
well,
Now, they're giants, yeah.
and when we get up to King David, there is a giant, and there seemed to be a race of giants. So is this just telling us how these giants came into being? And I just can't. And I think I even read once in this research paper, these were the devils that were cast out of heaven.
Ew.
And you come on, we don't know. Everybody comes up with these ideas, and I'm reading all these ideas, and I have no clue.
Well, you would consider someone a giant if they had on big military uniforms.
It says 9 or 10 feet tall.
I know, but if they had a big headdress and they were at battle, facing you, you would consider them a giant people. You don't have to be 10 feet tall.
Well, they were though.
Well, we do know there was a race, or at least individuals who were considered giants. My personal feeling, and doing all this research, but that's probably been 35, 40, since I did this in Old Testament, when I first got there in 1978. So how many years ago is that?
38.
Who knows? I can't remember everything. I got an A in content and probably
even wanna
a
remember.
C in grammar, but my whole goal was to see what was all out there, how people interpreted that passage, and it was all over the place. Which really leads to the conclusion nobody knows how to really interpret it.
The ancient alien theorists on TV would have you think that they were aliens.
Yeah,
They may be.
so I guess you could conclude, and the reason, and the Nephilim, the word Nephilim means the fallen.
Means what?
The fallen.
The fallen refers to a powerful giant.
The flesh.
Very signs.
Well,
The
mine
fallen
says
ones.
3 giants, but if I remember, one of those Hebrew words means fallen, and this is how they get the fallen angels.
The fallen ones, one says.
Okay, so, even going back to the Hebrew, doesn't help us. What he does is says it is the intermarriage between the line of Seth and the lines of Cain.
What
Cain's
does it
evil
say?
descendants.
The fallen ones ripe for judgment. So the ones that fell off.
Explosion of evil.
This is why some think it is the fallen angels or Satan's cohort.
Oh, wow.
So basically, again, this is a very strange passage that really seems not to help us any. And so what I'm thinking, okay, what it's trying to do is explain something to us, and the thing that comes out of the giants. So there were giants that we know of. And this is how the biblical writer says this is how they came into being. Other than that, I can't tell you, because people who know this passage better than I have they have about 10 different ways to look at it, which tells me no one really knows. There isn't a definitive interpretation of it. It's just one of those strange, well, if you really want to get back into my mind, this is probably an oral tradition that was passed down through the line of Seth and how we got to the Bibles, and it just, it was a story that became important. It was explaining something to somebody. It meant something to them, and it got into Scripture, and we probably have lost the context about it. My guess is it is explaining the race of giants.
So the fact that it's pretty much glossed over, it means that it's not that important for us to know?
Well, it's there. How much weight do you put on it? My way, like it says, is probably helping us to understand where this group of giants came from. Gives us
They're
meaning.
gonna be destroyed in the flood.
Well, it is. I
Then they
mean,
have to be,
because, and it's amazing is, this flood takes we're told the flood takes everybody out,
We can just take
except those in the ark. But we're pretty sure there was no giants in the ark, but by the time you get to King David, we still have giants.
They were tall enough, the head was above the water.
It was
So-
DNA. The DNA is what was.
And again, you've got to remember, the history of these ancient peoples isn't the same kind of history that we're used to. Their history were stories. And their stories were there to help them gain meaning and understanding of who they were, who they are, and where they came from.
And we know what happens to oral tradition.
And you
Yes.
know
If I tell
stories
you
how they
something, you
grow.
tell them something,
Right.
by the time it gets there,
And you can't, you've got to understand these storytellers, the keepers of the story, were pretty darn accurate.
who's your friend he's now remarried to a lady whose husband was a minister, kind of a big guy.
Oh, Doral Campbell,
Who's his wife married to?
Becky, oh, Jerry Rugburn.
Yes, he said he believes oral tradition is more accurate than the written word.
Wouldn't say it was more accurate, but I would say the keepers of the story, they didn't change them.
Right.
And so,
And they'd sit around the campfire, if they had fire then. And did they have fire yet? And tell the stories. I
and
mean,
and again, these stories explained who you were and gave you meaning to life. And like I said, when you do the research on this, it's all over the paper. So what it tells me again is no one really knows how these first 4 verses is. But it helps explain the next verse. Because you have all this chaos. You have all this disruption. You have all this ungodliness, unrighteousness. And verse 5 says, the Lord, and this is Lord, this is Yahweh, saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intentions of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. So from that thing to where they first called on the name of the Lord at the end of the chapter, there wasn't anything good that was going on earth. And I think what these first 4 is, it's just lending to the chaos and the darkness and the evil. Whatever was going on, it was getting worse and it was continuing. And so when God looks at what his creation had become, he wasn't real happy with it.
He can't be very happy with us now either.
But why-
Somebody will look over
in
everything.
verse 7, why does he,
Well, I haven't read verse 7 yet.
well, yeah, wiping the men off the earth?
he didn't read
And
that.
he includes the animals, the creatures that move
He didn't
above the
read that
ground.
yet. We're not there yet.
And the Lord, we'll get there. And the Lord regretted that he made man on the earth, and it grieved him to his heart. So the Lord said, I will blot out man, whom I have created from the face of the land, man and animals and creepy things and the birds of the heavens, for I am sorry that I have made them. So basically God is sitting there and he pronounces judgment on his created. But you got to remember from Genesis chapter 1, everything he created was good until sin entered the world. And sin disrupted everything, created havoc, destroyed relationships. I mean, it did a number.
But how did it include the animals and the birds? They didn't sin.
Well, let's just say his mode of carrying out his judgment was going to
Destruction is everything.
be complete destruction.
Or birds.
There were probably some bad birds.
Oh,
They're angry birds.
Angry
They're
birds.
angry.
Right.
I just read that the lady who designed Angry Birds for this toy company, which the toy
never
company
played that
licensed to
one.
You
this
never
company
have?
that made
No,
the
I never
game,
have.
had cut her out.
I've got it
Oh,
on
they
the-
did?
But she won in court, or she didn't, they made a settlement before a
Oh,
judge.
my word.
And all they said is undisclosed, but
Yes.
she's happy with the judgment.
She did well.
So anyway, but the point is, all the, the chapter 5 is condensed history. It brought us a long ways down through the history of the world. Chapter 1 through 4 of 6 just adds to the chaos and the unrighteousness that's going on in the world till it comes to a point God said, I've had it. I'm done with this mess.
so mankind left on its own without God is an evil.
That's right.
But they had started to call on the name of the Lord.
Well, and that is an interesting verse, but it seemed to have been lost all of a sudden, at least in the development of the story. So, anyway, we missed something in here. Going back to chapter 5, verse, when Elimelech had lived 182 years, he had fathered a son and called his name Noah, saying, out of the ground that the Lord has cursed, this one shall bring us relief from our work and from the painful toil of our hands. Lamech lived after he fathered Noah 595 years and had other sons and daughters. That's all it is. And after Noah was 500 years old, Noah fathered Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And so then it breaks, because now we're going to come back to Noah. Because God has pronounced judgment on the world. He has fed up the earth. His creation of mankind in his image screwed up everything he had created. And then it says, but verse 8 of chapter 6, but Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. Now again, it doesn't explain why Noah
Yeah.
found favor in the eyes of God, of the Lord. And you can draw all kinds of assumptions. Maybe Noah carried on that tradition through this lineage of calling on Yahweh. But does it tell us that?
It said in 9 he walked with God.
Well, yeah. And then these are the generations of Noah. Noah was a righteous man. That's because he found favor, just like Abraham. Blameless in his generation, Noah walked with God, and Noah had 3 sons. Okay.
That was quick.
Well, we also got that into chapter 5.
Right.
It explained all
32,
this,
yeah.
which goes to show you that it might be more than one author going on here. At least that's what a lot of
One
scholars.
storyteller.
So, and then verse 11 jumps us back up to verse 10. Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight, and if you're careful in the reading it, in verse 9 we use the word God. Verse 8 we had the Lord. The Lord is Yahweh. God is probably Elohim. And now the earth was corrupt in Elohim's sight, and the earth was filled with violence. And God saw. So now we're getting a retell of what we were just told. And behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. And God said to Noah, I have determined to make an end of all flesh, for the earth is filled with violence through them. Behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Make yourself an ark. So God's judgment is he's going to kill everyone. He's going to do away with this evil. And in this passage, as we get through it, we come to the first concept of remnant.
What?
Oh, remnant.
Remnant.
The remnant, there's always the remnant.
You have the mass, but God works only through a select remnant of the people. And it's going to be Noah and his family. They alone will be saved. And again, this concept, this theme is going to be reoccurring throughout the whole Old Testament until you come to the point the remnant becomes one. And you know who that is?
Jesus.
So it's just kind of like a funnel. So then it can go back out this way.
Mhm.
And that's why Paul says, you know, Jesus is the second Adam. It's all going to start all over again. Anyway,
Oh, I didn't know that. But who are all these people going to marry? Noah's family.
Yeah,
Who
that's,
are
I
they going to marry?
can get my head around that.
They're jumping.
One-
how much?
Yeah, no, no.
1 minute, 2 minutes, go.
How much? This is, see if we can get. So basically, he's going to tell Noah to make an ark. And he gives him the dimensions. And it's going to be 3 deaths. And he's going to bring a flood upon the earth to destroy all flesh, which is the breath of life under the heavens. Everything on earth shall die. I will establish my covenant with you. And so it's coming down, and he says, and every living thing of all flesh shall bring 2 of every sort into the ark to keep them alive with you. They shall be male and female. The birds according to their kinds, the animals according to their kinds, of every creepy thing on the ground according to his kind, 2 of every. So basically, in this ark, God's going to save and reestablish his people after the judgment.
You could have left the creepy things
Okay.
out.
You could have what?
Left the creepy things out.
Yeah.
So
Once
Like
and
the
for all.
snakes and the
we have
spiders
to
and the
identify when it destroys the earth, is it
We don't
just
know.
Palestine?
snakes.
Because that would, on the
Well, we're
average,
probably not in
he doesn't
Palestine.
get alligators because there's no alligators. in
Well,
the area.
cypress, and then what is a cypress? Well, there's no cypress trees around here, are
Well, who said we were in Palestine?
there? No, I meant,
No, right here,
just,
where did you get that?
where are
The Holy
cypress
Land,
trees is
yeah.
what
If
I'm
any.
saying.
We're not. Who said we're there? They haven't
Well,
shown that yet.
Well, we're not, you can't cover the whole world because you can't get.
Well, how do you know?
Because you can't get 2
The
of
sea bottom is
creatures.
found on top of mountaintops.
What was found on top of the mountain
The
top?
sea bottom, sea floor.
Oh, seafloor.
Okay, time's up. You've boggled our
There
minds
is not enough room in
Albert,
that ark to
can I-
get
are you-
2
can I
of
take
every
this
kind.
minute?
Well,
Yeah.
how do you know this destruction wasn't the comet that destroyed the dinosaurs?
Oh, they found
We don't.
their remains. Where is that
I
in
mean,
today's paper?
you gotta remember, which I'm probably gonna say Sunday, the gospel writers were very selective writers. They picked and chose what they were gonna write about.
Right.
Because they were writing for a purpose. And for John, he lays it out so that you might believe. And John says that he did a lot of other things. And John was a whole lot more selective than the other 3 were. So my guess is the writers of Genesis were selective because they had a point to make. And you can't get, you can't get lost in the forest looking at every leaf. You got to stand back and look at the forest. And the idea is creation, what God created through mankind turned out to be a disaster because of sin and who man and the evil and the destruction and all of that. And God wanted to start again. And he introduces us to Noah. Again, this is not going to be the first time this happens. But it is what's happening here. Who's the next person that's going to happen?
Fire.
Is that what we want?
How about Abraham?
Oh,
Because God's, ultimately God's going to try to bring us back. But mankind's not helping him whatsoever. And at this point in time, it is so bad, basically gave up on everybody but the family of Noah. For some reason, Noah was walking with God. He was righteous, and righteous means he was doing what was the right thing to be doing. And this was before the law. So his light righteousness, and Paul, I don't think Paul ever argues Noah, but Noah was considered righteous before the law ever was conceived of. It's just that Noah was doing what was the good thing to do in God's eyes. He was different from everybody else. And he had some kind of relationship with God, whatever that might have been. And it might have been a very primitive relationship. But it was so much different than anybody else's. God selected Noah.
Well, now would be a great time for God to do it all again.
Oh, and are we
Oh, well, he
building the
might
ark?
be doing it all again.
Are we building the ark?
I
Yes,
don't
we'll
want
build
to.
it.
I'm tired.
Who's gonna build that ark?
Ray and I will.
So,
Okay.
well, the next time he comes back, he'll take care of it once and for all.
Yeah.
And we'll never have to worry about it again. So anyway,
When are you on, chapter 7?
it started out at a point at the beginning, it spread out. God's going to bring it back to a point through Noah. It's going to spread out. He's going to bring it back to a point again in Abraham. And it's going to spread out, and it's going to come back to another point called Jesus. It's going to spread about until a point in time comes that it'll be all settled. Our Father in heaven, we just thank you that we get a grasp of what it means to be of this world, whether we're in or out of a relationship with you. That broken relationship has really damaging effects. But through our relationship with you, there is peace and salvation. Let us hear that story over and over again. That with you, there is peace and salvation. This we pray in your Son's name.